Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, thank you for being here with us today, physically, and then for those watching us. I am delighted to welcome you to this special edition of Resilience Talks, aptly titled Under Siege, the riveting story of Ukraine resilience. We gather here today at the prestigious French Institute, not just as individuals, but as a community, united by a shared commitment to uphold democratic values, respect for international law, and a belief in a Europe whole, free, and at peace. Before we commence, I would like to take a moment to reflect upon the gravity of the situation we will be discussing today. Ukraine, a country that has consistently demonstrated an unwavering commitment to its path towards European integration. It is currently under an illegal and criminal invasion by Russia. This blatant disregard for international law, sovereignty, territorial integrity is not just an attack on Ukraine, but an affront to the very principle that bind us together as the Euro-Atlantic community. And yet, despite the immense challenges it faces, Ukraine stands resilient. The courage, the determination, and the indomitable spirit shown by the Ukrainian people serves as a beacon of inspiration for all of us here. We aim to shine a spotlight on this remarkable resilience and discuss the wider implication of the current crisis on the Euro-Atlantic security. We are privileged today to host two esteemed guests. First, I have the honor to introduce His Excellency Mr. Ihor Prokopchuk, Ambassador of Ukraine to Romania. Ambassador Prokopchuk, your tireless effort and steadfast dedication to represent Ukraine and its interests are truly commendable, especially, and I emphasize, especially in these challenging times. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Ambassador. Also, we are joined today by Mr. Ovidiu Raetchi, the President of the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center. At the end, we will have a Q&A session, a couple of questions for the public, so feel free to join us along the way. Ambassador, thank you for accepting our invitation again. And before we dive into the conversation, I'd like to take this opportunity and to say a couple of words because you are here. It's an honor for us. I know how busy you are in your agenda. I just wanted to say, and I think I speak for a lot of people, that I hold and we hold the utmost admiration for the Ukrainian people's resilience amid Russia's brutal assault. Their remarkable bravery from the armed force to the ordinary citizens of all ages is deeply inspiring, both personally and professionally. Facing tremendous adversity, they exemplify unyielding spirit and steadfast commitment to their inherent democratic rights. Their collective courage is not only a testament to their strength, but also a beacon of determination for the future. We continue to be inspired by your country and by your people and by its continuous and permanent resilience. As a first question, Ambassador, these days, whether we gather in Bucharest, whether it's in Paris, in Berlin, in all of the capitals of the Euro-Atlantic community, experts, academia, everybody is talking about Vilnius, the next NATO summit. Ukraine's aspiration have been well known to belong to the Euro-Atlantic family. I wanted to ask you, in terms of Ukraine's expectation regarding this NATO in Vilnius in July, what are your expectations? And is it a Ukrainian membership that your country seeks the most? Or is it security guarantees until the end of the war and then a potential membership? Or is it at this point that you need more weapons, more ammunition, more military aid than an actual NATO membership?
Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good morning to all participants of today's event. Before I take this specific question, I would like to thank all of you for participation, for taking interest in this ongoing war, in its repercussions, and also in what we all need to do together to counter the ongoing aggression of the Russian Federation and help Ukraine defeat the aggressor. Mr. Moderator made a very extensive introduction to our today's debate, in particular referring to the shared values that we all are committed to. For my part, I would also want to express gratitude to the director of Institut Français for offering us this space. But when Mr. Moderator remembered this ideal of Europe whole, free and at peace, I immediately recalled a very important document that was endorsed, that was signed in Paris in 1990. And that was called a Charter for a New Europe, or we call it Paris Charter for a New Europe. And this is one of the fundamental documents relating to the values, to the principles, alongside the Helsinki Final Act, whereby the countries came to agreement on the fundamental norms and principles that unite us and which we want to adhere to build a stable, secure and safe environment for all of our peoples. And therefore, I would want to say that it was just a couple of days ago that I participated in another discussion which was titled Ukraine, the Battle for the Freedom of Europe. And I felt that there is a very strong correlation between this vision of Europe whole, free and at peace, and this fight that is currently fought by Ukraine to defend the freedom and the values that were very well articulated in Paris nearly 35 years ago. This is what exactly is happening. About the specific question of the upcoming Vilnius NATO summit. This is the summit to which Ukraine attaches particular importance in terms of its ambitions to become a full-fledged NATO member. It is absolutely clear to us, and I think it's been clear to us before, and also it's very clear to the NATO allies, that membership in the alliance is the way to ensure the security of a state. And NATO, over its history, has proved to be the most successful defense alliance which provides for safety and security of its member states, and therefore the foundation for democracy and prosperous development of nations that make part of NATO. Facing the onslaught from the Russian side, after, as you know, different treaties which were signed in the past between Ukraine and Russia relating to mutual respect for the borders, after the Budapest Memorandum of 1994, when Ukraine renounced its nuclear arsenal, and where Russia had undertaken commitments to provide for security of Ukraine within the existing frontiers, within the existing borders, and having faced a blatant breach of undertaken commitments by Russia, starting not in last year, in 2022, but rather in 2014, when Russia first invaded the Ukrainian territory in the Crimean Peninsula, attempted annexation of this part of Ukraine's territory, and further made an incursion into the eastern parts of Ukraine. So, based on these developments, it's absolutely clear to us that one and key priority for Ukraine's security is full membership in the alliance. faced with the aggression, we see that now is the time that the alliance must show no hesitancy in terms of realizing its own vision, which was articulated at NATO summit in Bucharest in 2008, when NATO allies said that Ukraine, alongside Georgia, will become NATO members. And now is the time when Ukraine is showing this heroic defense against external aggression, when Ukraine is defending every single principle or value which NATO was set up to defend. This is what Ukraine is doing now. We feel that this is the time when NATO, all the allies, need to take a decision with very specific timeline of how Ukraine implements its course towards full membership in the alliance. This is the time when such a decision needs to be taken. And therefore we expect that to make Vilnius NATO summit a success, it is necessary to very clearly articulate what we call an algorithm. Others would call it a timetable of Ukraine's accession to the alliance. Leaving Vilnius, it needs to be clear to the allies within NATO, to Ukraine, how we move together to make sure that Ukraine becomes a NATO member. This is number one. We know that this will not happen immediately. We know the impediments which are posed by the ongoing Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and the impact upon realizing this objective of Ukraine's membership. And therefore, alongside the formulation of this very clear timetable and algorithm, we suggest and we expect that a decision will be taken on security guarantees for Ukraine until the time when Ukraine becomes a full-fledged NATO member. Such guarantees would not be a substitute for Ukraine's future NATO membership, but that would be an instrument for security guarantees for Ukraine in the process of it joining NATO. Here we also use a precedent that was set by the European Union last year, when a historic decision on Ukraine's candidate status with the EU was taken, and which was accompanied by 7 recommendations, which are to be implemented by Ukraine for the decision to be taken on launching the accession negotiations. And these 7 recommendations are very clearly formulated. We know what Ukraine needs to do. And once we complete implementation, we know that we are at the next stage. This is what we expect from a decision to be taken by NATO in Vilnius. And of course, once these key substantive decisions are taken, of course, there will be this also the institutional change, the transformation of institutional setup of our relations by transforming the current Commission into a council. That will be an upgrade, and this upgrade needs to be reflective of very specific decisions of substantive nature, to which I referred.
Thank you. We will be touching upon the EU integration a bit later on. I was asking because more and more countries are publicly support the NATO membership bid. France was among the latest countries that have sort of publicly supported. We know that President Klaus Johannes signed a document with President Zelensky in Odessa, if I'm not wrong.
In Chisinau.
In Chisinau, sorry. Where we pledged our full support and stand behind Ukraine's bid to NATO. So I just wanted to ask you, is it the ongoing conflict a problem for Ukraine's membership? Do we have to wait to the end of it? We had the example. I mean, I've seen a lot of experts talking about Germany, East and West, when it happened, and how the other part of the Germany joined the NATO, although it was pretty complicated. Do you see any comparable situation? Do you see it as a problem, or are you sure that very soon, as I am and probably all of us, we believe in a strong and firm Ukrainian victory in pushing back the illegal and criminal Russian army?
This is a war, a very big war. And of course, it has very big implications in different areas. And we understand that ourselves and also our partners are giving thought about how the consequences of this war also have an impact on this relationship between Ukraine and NATO. First, I would emphasize that by now, Ukraine has progressed in its relationship with NATO to such a level that allows us to speak about de facto Ukraine's membership in the alliance. This reflects the way we interact on the level of military command of Ukraine, NATO headquarters, and individual NATO member states. This reflects the scope of procurement of weapons and technology from NATO countries to Ukraine to help Ukraine defeat the aggressor. That relates to exchange of different information between our militaries. So largely it is a question of what we have de facto formalizing in a more normative manner. The question is whether this war is to kind of slow down, or we should await the final victory of Ukraine in this war. Our view that not, because that would serve as an incentive to the aggressor to prolong this war, to continue to fuel the war on the Ukrainian territory, because they would know that this is what kind of delays the decisions to be taken related to Ukraine's accession to NATO. And this would also again indicate what I said in my initial introduction, the hesitancy on the part of the allies as to the future and the way that we take our relationship to realizing this vision of the future. So we would say no. We need, of course, to take into account the continuing war, but we also, in parallel, need to take decisions that would be very specific, that would relate to, again, charting very clearly how we move towards the goal of Ukraine's membership. And this is what also send a very strong signal of the strength on the part of the NATO and of the allies, that they would not make any detours relating to Ukraine's future membership. But the vision is clear, the path is clear, and we would take this path disregarding the ongoing Russian aggression. So for us, it is extremely important also from this viewpoint.
Because you touched upon the how Ukraine might be de facto a member. I have in front of me the Washington Treaty, 1949, the NATO Treaty, and in the preamble we read, the members of NATO, they are determined to safeguard the freedom, the common heritage, and civilization of their peoples, founded on the principle of democracy, individual liberty, and the rule of law. And because you mentioned earlier, and when I read this, I thought of all those brave Ukrainian soldiers in the trenches in Bakhmut or across the front line. They are fighting for this.
Mr. Moderator, thank you for drawing attention of our audience to the preamble of the Washington Treaty. Because for me personally, this preamble bears lots of significance. You would often hear that when they speak about the Washington Treaty, they speak about Article 5. the collective defense. But the introduction to all of these articles is this short preamble, just few sentences, but which very well capture why the alliance is set up and what goals the alliance pursues.
Absolutely.
And this is exactly what I had in mind when I said that Ukraine is defending the values which the alliance was set up to defend. And what I had in mind was a specific reference to these words which we just read.
Well, we didn't talk before.
We didn't.
This was just, Mr. Raetchi, I just wanted to have your input. What would a strong Ukraine, we already know, and probably it would be furthered that the Ukrainian army at the end of this conflict, the victorious Ukrainian army, heavily equipped with modern equipment from NATO member states and EU. What would the Ukrainian NATO member mean for the eastern flank, for Romania, for the Black Sea security?
Thank you, Sebastian. You know that I don't usually jump into your remarkable show, but today I'm here as a symbol of our respect, the center respect, and Romanian respect for Ukraine's effort. I'm sure that we will work for years in order to understand the Ukrainian contribution to the resilience of Europe, of NATO. Everybody's studying now what Ukrainians are doing. They are remarking their huge contribution in new strategies in the military field. So I'm sure that we will learn from Ukraine a lot, and I'm sure that Ukraine will be a huge contribution on the academic level, because we are studying it on the academic level, on the military level, on the diplomatical level. But let's make sure that His Excellency is here to convey his message. And let me be your rather assistant today than your co-moderator rather than an analyst, and ask His Excellency about some huge contribution to resilience. For example, the continuity of government. We all know that the Russians are attacking traditionally, the Soviet Union is traditionally attacking the continuity of government. And besides all those huge columns of tanks that are heading towards the capital, what they are aiming, in fact, is cut the continuity of government, to reach the head of the state, to make him desert, to make him run, to go for the palace, the seat of power. And that's what they did in Afghanistan. That's what they did in Eastern Europe, in Hungary. This time they failed. And they failed because of Mr. Zelensky's courage, determination. He didn't want a ride. He wanted ammunition. But I'm sure that he wasn't alone, that it was a system that worked, that proved efficient. Everybody knew what he had to do. Everybody kept their ground, or at least the majority of the Ukrainian people. And this is one idea that I would like to have a comment from His Excellency, how he explains this very functional doctrine of the Ukrainian continuity of government. Second, I would look at societal resilience. What Ukrainian people proved is a remarkable resilience in terms of this field of believing, proving trust in the Ukrainian state idea, because this is one idea that Mr. Putin tried to deny, to try to put under question mark. But we all know that Mr. Putin's attempt to deny this Ukrainian idea is fake from the historical point of view, but also proved fake from the Ukrainian people reaction. They all gathered around the idea of a free, of an independent, of a sovereign, of a whole Ukraine, and they are willing to fight for it, to make the supreme sacrifice for this idea. It's a way to prove the societal resilience of Ukraine and the efficiency of this idea with your own sacrifice. And this is something that the Russian soldiers can do because they don't understand why they are there. So this is a second idea that I would like to have an explanation from His Excellency. How were you surprised of this societal resilience shown by your people?
Well, thank you, Mr. Director, for these very interesting questions relating to different aspects of Ukraine's resilience. And as we go on, we can also speak again about other areas of Ukraine's resilience relating to energy, relating to economy, and so on. But on these two, the governance and the societal resilience, I fully agree with the views which are often expressed in relation to the initial developments after the Russia's large-scale invasion into Ukraine, and that is that the Kremlin regime made a gigantic misjudgment and miscalculation about the reaction in Ukraine, both on the level of the government and on the level of the society. Speaking about, I would take the second about the society. I think that the root cause of this gigantic misjudgment is Putin's denial of existence of Ukrainian nation as such. And this is the view that he maintained for a number of years. The idea of what would we call a single nation, which in Moscow view means that there is no such nation as Ukraine. There is this big Russian nation. So, and it was a few months before this big invasion that this pseudo-historic article by Putin was made public, which again argued for this particular view. So, and that was, I think, a very significant root cause of this miscalculation. Actually, what is happening now in this war of genocidal nature against Ukraine? Because through this war, Putin's regime wants to eliminate the signs of Ukrainian nation and Ukrainian identity, and therefore to bring it in compliance with the views that they expressed before, that there is no such nation. There is only one. And this misjudgment again led to the very fast and strong resistance on the level of general public, and resistance and response in all areas throughout Ukraine. Also those that fell under temporary Russian occupation. On the government level, of course, we even before the large-scale invasion, we fully were cognizant of the fact that the Russians would be trying to disrupt the communication, and therefore we were preparing for it. But in principal terms, I think it was of particular significance that all the key administrative structures, they continued the operation, starting from the president of the country, the president of Ukraine, and then the government, and the parliament, the Verkhovna Rada. So all of these key state institutions continued their function. And of course also a very strong factor of that contributed to maintaining the national resilience was very effective communication of the President of Ukraine with the people. Again, solidifying this unity in countering the aggression. The element relating to communication, it retains its high significance, both internally and I would say also externally. President's communication with the world leaders across all continents, again, presenting Ukraine's views, Ukraine's story, the story of Ukraine's fight for freedom and democracy. And also, again, soliciting full support from all these countries in making sure that Ukraine can defeat the aggressor. Because I would say that what we repeatedly emphasize, that after all what Ukraine stands for are the key principles of the UN Charter. And all members of the United Nations, they have signed up to the Charter and these principles. And this is what Ukraine is defending now in this war that was unleashed by Russia against Ukraine. And it must be in the interest of all countries across the globe to see that these principles are defended because they serve the interests of every single state around the world.
So, thank you for pointing that out. Obviously, at the roots of this conflict, we're talking about territorial integrity, sovereignty, which is fully in the UN Charter. Coming back a little bit of Ukraine and the conflict, since February 24, there's been allies, countries, friends that have been more reacted with a lot more aid. For example, the United States has an impressive aid and continues to do so. In your perspective, has the EU, has the US done enough? Can we do more?
Of course, this is an ongoing conversation and debate that we have between Ukraine and our partners. And I would want to, first of all, underline the importance of solidarity with Ukraine and importance of different coalitions which were built between Ukraine and the partners and which serve the goal of ultimate Ukraine's victory in this war. And when I speak about specific coalitions, I have in mind, say, even the most recent discussions about the F-16 coalition. And this would be a coalition of countries that are willing to support Ukraine in terms of procuring F-16 planes and also training Ukraine's pilots. This is the Patriot coalition. It was earlier this year that first Patriot systems, air defense systems, were procured to Ukraine, and they immediately proved a very high effectiveness in their combat operation. Basically, it is every single day and night that Ukraine remains under attack of Russian missiles and Russian attack drones without any areas of exclusion. It's the entire territory of the country, and all cities across the country are targets, and missiles are launched at them. We most often have such attacks on Kiev, and many of the air defense equipment that was procured to Ukraine is now used and proves its effectiveness. But Ukraine's needs are far larger, and this is the topic that we constantly discuss. The needs are far larger. We need more such systems to defend our cities, to defend our civilians, and to defend our infrastructure facilities, critical infrastructure, civilian infrastructure. This is where we need more air defense systems. we have a tank coalition whereby the willing countries pooled together to provide tanks and also to provide for their maintenance. We have an IT coalition which strengthened the capabilities of Ukraine to counter constant cyber attacks coming from the Russian aggressor. And there are also other areas in which we cooperate. And in each one of those areas, we do see gaps. And this is probably an answer to the question where more can be done. Of course, we see the areas where we need more capability, where we see gaps. And our interest is to see that these gaps are filled as quickly as possible. Because while these gaps continue, this brings more suffering to Ukrainians, more deaths, and more destruction. The sooner we receive the capabilities that we need, especially military capabilities, and when the capabilities that is primarily now the air defense systems, the aircraft, the long-range missiles, and also the armored vehicles. These are the key needs of Ukraine. The faster we receive them, the more we have the possibility to defend the people, to make the counteroffensive faster, more productive, and therefore it will again help us to shorten the way to Ukraine's victory. One of the points that we need to remind that Ukraine was invaded by a country that was preparing to fight against the entire NATO. They were making claims about advances far beyond Ukraine's territory, and they were preparing for it in military terms. They invaded Ukraine, and we stopped them, and we pushed them back, and we need all the weapons that our military need to push them back to their own territory.
Just to make a point here, a lot of the air defense, for example, you mentioned, I remember before Ukraine received some of the equipment from the Western allies, those tweets that you would see at night, 3 bombers left some airport, and then in the morning you see a lot of damages, civilian infrastructures attacked, and after the transfer, the effective transfer of the air defense, you would see 48 missiles and sometimes 100% interceptance. So those equipment, that aid is saving thousands and thousands of lives. And as we have seen, Russians specifically target residential buildings, markets, train stations, and so on. I just want to go back a little bit because earlier you mentioned EU integration. Last year on the 17th of June, Ukraine received the candidate status, and ever since a full-fledged process has started. I wanted to ask you, because we all remember in 2014 the Euromaidan images with the European flag flying high and proud, and I'm pretty young, but I don't have any other image in my lifetime where people actually died for just keeping that flag. That it was impressive, and I wanted to. It's both remarkable and costly. And when I say costly, it's an understatement. I wanted to ask, in your view, when do you think these negotiations, the accession negotiation, will end and Ukraine will be a fully fledged member of the EU, which I believe it will be only a matter of time. And the second, what is it so attractive, so interesting about the European Union that thousands and thousands are still dying in trenches right now, that they just want to be part of it? Because everything started with EU, right? With the association agreement, 2014, and then further down the road. What is it so attractive about the EU that people are actually dying for it?
Well, that's very, very interesting question, and I think that there may be, of course, very different considerations about relating to disadvantages that are offered by the EU. I would say that you're absolutely right, pointing out that this very committed struggle of Ukraine and Ukrainians for their future within the European Union was kick-started by the Revolution of Dignity in 2013, and even the name of this revolution reflects that there were forces that wanted to deprive Ukrainians of their future. For Ukrainians, I mean, this future, I mean, the future of democracy and prosperity, it is associated with the EU, and it's also about human dignity, whereby the people can realize the ambitions they have, the objectives they set to themselves. And once there were these external forces that wanted to take this dream away from the Ukrainians, it all kick-started this struggle. To me, this struggle is also inspiring for the EU nations themselves, because until that time, there were some discussions about the EU losing its luster, losing its magnetism for the European societies. And now that Ukrainians are showcasing this resolve to fight for these values, it very clearly shows that they must not be taken for granted, like probably in decades many would feel like. But this is exactly a big treasure that has been achieved by the nations of the European Union, and Ukrainians are now showing, you know, with their sacrifice, that it is worth defending them, and it is worth dying for them. Again, this is the Ukrainian vision of its future. What drives the vision of, again, freedom, and probably this feeling of freedom is in Ukrainians' DNA. They fight hard for it, and this freedom can only be realized among these nations that have shown that they are, again, they all share these values of democracy, rule of law, and freedom.
Sebastian, if you will allow me, I will just go back a second on the idea of the Western support for Ukraine and ask you if, in the light of the recent events in Russia, the failure of the Russian state, the Saturday insurrection, do you feel that after this sign of weakness, the support of the Western power would be stronger for Ukraine, now that everybody saw that the war seems to be won? People never believed we will reach this point. Now the Western people are starting to have this image of failure of the Russian state to survive the defeat, of a search for maybe a potential new leader that will accept negotiation and will accept to leave Ukraine, will accept to leave Crimea. Do you feel that in these conditions the Western help will get stronger, or maybe will feel somehow the panic that the Russian state is collapsing, and that somehow Putin is offering an authority that is more safe than the authority offered by some criminal fighters as Prigozhin is, although they are both guilty of genocide?
First, I would probably say about this the goal of defeating Russia. I would first of all say that Ukrainians have already shown that they can defeat Russians. After all, in March of last year, the Russian troops were a few kilometers, 10 or 12 kilometers away from Kiev. So they were very close to Ukrainian capital. They were also besieging other big Ukrainian cities like Chernihiv in the northern part of the country. Kharkiv, they were also attempting to conquer it. So they were putting under siege many Ukrainian cities. And they failed to do that. They were defeated there. And large parts of the territory that were initially occupied by the Russians were liberated by the Ukrainian forces. And therefore, we have already shown that we can defeat the Russians on the Ukrainian territory. And this should serve as enough incentive for all of our Western partners to provide the support, the assistance identified by Ukrainian military, because they know what they need on the battlefield to defeat the Russians, so that we continue doing that. And it has been stated very clearly by Ukrainian president that our objective and our goal is to liberate Ukrainian territory without any exception. So that also means that all of the territory, including Crimea, must be liberated from the Russian presence. They must go back to their territory. We want to see the re-establishment of a border between Ukraine and Russia. We know where this border is, and our goal is that the sovereignty of Ukraine is re-established on all of these territories under the border. Another aspect is, of course, what is happening in Russia. And we have argued that Putin's regime is not as strong as it wants to create the appearance of. And basically, this action by last Saturday only proved the weaknesses of the Russian regime and also the cracks in this entourage around the Kremlin. Some observers also note the ease with which these forces, the Wagner forces, moved towards Moscow through different oblasts without meeting any resistance. Now the observers also indicate to the quite significant for one day number of aircraft that were shot down by these forces. And this again, this shows this the overall state of the control of the regime in that country, the state of the military, and the war was started in Moscow. I mean, it was entirely unprovoked war of aggression. That's absolutely clear. And yes, it will also stop there. It's hard to predict what could be the developments in Moscow, but that will have a very strong impact on all those cracks that were identified, were seen before, but now clearly they become public and obvious to all observers. We can only see that they would expand, and resistance to this suicidal course, or the course of self-destruction that was chosen by Putin and his cronies, that it be reversed.
Just to add up this weekend, and what a long weekend this was. I saw a tweet that was mentioning that from the second best army in the world, it went to the second best army in Russia. And that was just to illustrate. Mr. Raetchi somehow led me to my next question. Putin had hoped from the very beginning that there's going to be some sort of fatigue in Western societies. Elections are coming up in the United States pretty soon. Next year, we're going to see elections in Europe all across member states. Are you worried?
Well, first, I would rather say from the very beginning, Putin and his regime expected that they would take the upper hand very fast.
Yeah.
And when they faced the failure of this initial plan and initial intention, then in later months, it was a reconsideration and rather again also the thinking placing the bet on kind of a prolonged war of attrition and fatigue of the partners staying with Ukraine. The leadership role of the United States of America was crucial in providing support and assistance to Ukraine from the very first days. And it remains crucial now in terms of, again, leading this coalition of democratic nations to help Ukraine win in this war. We have enjoyed a very broad bipartisan support in the US Congress. So the strong commitment to helping Ukraine is shared across the aisles among US congressmen. It is a very strong position of the US president. And of course, we expect that this commitment of the United States of America to the ideals of democracy, it will stay unwavering. And we will continue to be supported by the United States. These are also the assurances that Ukraine receives from the US administration. And we continue to maintain on all levels a very close contact with the counterparts in the United States. The elections that are due to take place next year across many of the European countries, of course, they will somehow may distract attention. But after all, it's important to remember to all that support of Ukraine is not merely a moral choice of supporting a victim of aggression. It is a self-interest for the countries of Europe to see that Ukraine wins. And again, I hope that this premise and this consideration will continue to drive the political forces, political elites across Europe in maintaining constant support to Ukraine and staying in solidarity with Ukraine. Again, this is a very strong message that we receive from leaders from across Europe, in particular in Romania, the message that the countries will stay with Ukraine as long as it is necessary. This is what gives a reassurance to us, and this is what we feel serves the interests of both Ukraine and the interests of all of these nations.
It is true. Only 2 days ago, Mr. Klaus Johannes reiterated the same pledge in Netherlands with the B9 presidents. As we draw to the end, I just wanted, before taking a few questions from the public, to ask you with regards to China's peace plan. We have seen in the past 2-3 months President of China Xi Jinping going to Moscow. We have seen, for example, Prime Minister Kishida of Japan going to Kiev. We have seen statements from the global south, some of them in support, some of them quite ambiguous. How do you perceive all of this? Do you see it sort of a countries in this multi-bipolar world that it's growing now ever more as some of the countries picking sides? What do you make of it?
Well, first I would say that first and foremost, Ukraine and Ukrainians want peace. And we have our vision of how to reach this peace. And this vision was encapsulated in the peace proposal that was presented by the President of Ukraine at the G20 summit last year. The plan that contains very specific elements, very specific points that kind of encompass different aspects of what it would take to establish a just and lasting peace. And in fact, this vision, Ukrainian vision of the peace and the peace formula, was reflected in the United Nations General Assembly resolution that was adopted in February of this year with the title of United Nations Charter underlying the just and lasting peace in Ukraine. This, in our review, should serve as a foundation, as the basis of collective efforts of advancing towards establishment of peace. Specific elements which are included in this plan, they refer, say, to food security, to nuclear security, to restoration of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, to restoration of respect of the principles of the UN Charter, on countering the effects of ecocide, on release of detainees and prisoners of war. So basically, these individual elements, they reflect both the issues relating to some key norms of international law. They reflect some elements that are particularly pertinent for, say, the global food security. And they reflect elements of humanitarian nature. So we would say that the formula that the President of Ukraine presented contains universal interests and natures. And therefore, there would be countries across the globe who would see and find for themselves something interesting, what they are willing to support, and where they want to invest their efforts to see that at least this part of the plan is realized. It's not some kind of a rigid document. It's something where we want to unite like-minded countries around specific parts of the plan. And therefore, it needs to be appealing to countries of global south, what is called, to countries in Latin America. And I mentioned because we're very pleased to have the ambassador of Argentina with us in the audience today. So we feel that it is for countries from across the globe to see where they see particular benefit. And this is also the topic that was discussed with partners in China, in Beijing. It was recently that President Zelensky had a telephone conversation with the Chinese leader. We had an envoy from Beijing visiting Ukraine, where he shared ideas of China relating to the establishment of peace, while President of Ukraine shared Ukraine's vision and Ukraine's plan. And we do see a role that could be played by China in supporting implementation of Ukraine's vision for peace. We very much hope that we will find it possible to engage also the China and other countries in implementation of this peace plan.
Thank you. If anybody has a question, yeah, do we have a micro or just yeah, no, for the recorder. Yeah.
Yeah, you can speak in English.
So first of all, I want to thank you for this eloquent and compelling talk. I'm in no official capacity here. My knowledge is a concerned citizen of and Mr. Raetchi's friend, although I'm not sure if he will answer my calls after this. But I do have a couple of questions, if you will allow me.
Just one question, please. Yes.
And I will answer to His Excellency. President Zelensky said in one of his speeches, this war is not done.
I don't hear well, sorry. Can you speak louder, please?
Louder.
President Zelensky said in one of his speeches, this war is not done until we will get all the territories back. Meaning that going back to the borders of 1991. Rightfully so. Ukraine deserves and needs war reparations. Ukraine deserves and needs an international tribunal so we can prosecute this criminal, pardon my French, and his minions, and rightfully so. But on the other hand, we have Vladimir Putin, who thinks he is, among other things, a historian, and he says, you know, Sevastopol was founded by Catherine the Great in 1783, so it's mine. But we know that's not true. So, Ukraine, in my opinion, already won the war on the battlefield, which is great. But a small victory won't suffice. So I think Ukraine still needs to win the long-term peace. Here's my question. Is Ukraine willing to broker a deal, whether it's a DMZ, a demilitarized zone like in North Korea, South Korea, or maybe giving out some parts of Crimea if in return Ukraine receives full NATO membership and, of course, an official commitment on fast forward for accessing the EU. Because this will prevent the Russians from coming back in 15, 20 years trying to invade again. They don't have, without creating a global conflict, they don't have the capacity nor the wherewithal to go in all-out war against NATO. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think that I partly answered this question when I spoke earlier. And I would again reiterate that Ukraine has shown that it can win this war, and it will win, which means that all of Ukraine's territories must be liberated until the borders of 1991. As I said, we know where these borders are. We had an agreement with the Russians on the state border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation, which was ratified by the parliaments of the two countries. We know very well where the border is. And all of these territories must be liberated without any territorial concessions to the Russians. And that's the view taken very clearly by the president of Ukraine and also by the people of Ukraine. When you look at some of the recent opinion polls conducted in Ukraine by very authoritative agencies, over 70% of Ukrainian population say no territorial concessions to Ukraine, to Russia. None. We will win this war. And this is why, again, I made this point about we must not give a pretext to Putin to extend this war, and by extending the war, delaying the decisions to be taken in NATO on Ukraine's membership. It is important that we continue to liberate Ukrainian territories, we continue to advance towards the border, and at the same time, very specific decisions be taken by NATO on Ukraine's, again, progress, very specific with timelines towards NATO membership. Without, again, giving any excuse to Moscow to continue to prolong the war because they would see that this delays Ukraine's membership future in the alliance. So I think that, in my view, the position, public position taken by the president of Ukraine, the government of Ukraine, is very clear here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me add that also from the Euro-Atlantic point of view, from the civilized world point of view, this is the right answer. No concession, because every sign of weakness will, for long term, justify using war as a means to reshape borders.
It's a very important comment, and you would see in the basic documents relating to agreed international norms, you would find that no excuse can be made to justify a war of aggression. And therefore, these references to whoever founded whatever city have no meaning. We have the norms, we agreed the borders, we signed the documents, we have the charter whereby we all committed ourselves to respect international borders. That's it, full stop. Borders between states can be changed only in agreement between these two states, full stop. And this is the position that we all must maintain because it serves the interests of peace, stability and security of all, on all continents.
Thank you.
Let's go from the idea that Ukraine is accepted in NATO now. What we should expect from Russia? Escalation of the tensions and of the war, or the escalation and they will retire because they can't win anywhere with NATO and so on. And what we should expect from the non-democratic states? Because we need to analyze more also if we choose to go on the politics of fait accompli towards Russia and say, okay, now Ukraine is a member of NATO. What we should expect from Russia?
Well, my view is that Russia will accept this fact. And we need to create this fact. Just like they accepted the fact that Finland and Sweden applied for NATO membership. And Finland is already a NATO member state. They accepted this fact. And this must be precisely also the situation with Ukraine. Russia must not be given even a slightest hint of veto in terms of decisions that are to be taken by the alliance. And again, by now, Ukraine has proved, again, its full allegiance to the values, and it's also very strong commitment to defend militarily, pay the ultimate sacrifice for defending these ideals and values. You may look again, there are these different surveys that are conducted about level of commitment in different countries across the alliance, about how people are willing to take up the arms to do the same. And this is what Ukraine is doing, and therefore Ukraine's membership in the alliance will be a huge contribution to defense capabilities. It will be a very big asset to the alliance in military terms, in terms of strengthening the capacities to defend collectively every inch of the NATO territory.
Absolutely.
Should we expect nuclear escalation from Russia if, for example, we accept Ukraine now in NATO? Because actually this is the biggest fear of a lot of Europeans and so on, that if we take very brave decisions towards Ukraine and so on, we will see a nuclear escalation. This is a real fear, or we really should fear nuclear bombs going to London, how they are threatening every time on the propaganda and so on. We will bomb London, we will bomb Washington and so on. Should we really expect a nuclear escalation if we take the brave decisions like acceptance of Ukraine in NATO?
Well, we have seen indeed recently the escalation of rhetorics relating to the nuclear threat. And it must be a very, very firm stance of the alliance, of the European Union on rejecting such rhetorics and making it very clear that it is unacceptable. I would not see it in terms of a kind of likelihood of nuclear escalation on the Russian side as such, but What we do see are the risks of Russians committing yet another atrocious war crime by making a terrorist attack in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Maybe, again, devising a false flag operation. But what we do see is that the Russians have made preliminary preparations for executing a terrorist act on the territory of the station. Some military fortifications that were built there, and also the areas of within the perimeter of the nuclear power plant that were mined by Russian military. And this mining has already been confirmed by the mission of the International Atomic Energy Agency that visited Ukraine. This is where we do see a danger, a threat now, and therefore we very strongly encourage the international partners to be very firm in their reaction of preempt such a course of action on the Russian side. Particularly because we have an example of destruction by Russian of the dam of Kakhovka nuclear hydroelectric power station, and that was the most serious ecological and humanitarian disaster in Europe in the past decades. We feel that the reaction of the international community to this act of terrorism must have been stronger. And the sanctions that must be imposed on the Russian regime for such action must be significantly stronger. The pressure must be increased. Also as a preemptive measure to discourage it from committing similar crimes on other facilities in Ukraine. Thank you.
One more question, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Drew Beck. I'm the U.S. Army Europe and Africa Host Nation Advisor for Romania. So I live here in Constanța. My question concerns disinformation, particularly in Romania, as the Ukrainian ambassador to Romania, and as Romania heads into elections next year, as the U.S. heads into elections next year. Are you concerned about the ability of disinformation coming from Russia to put cracks into Romania's support for Ukraine, support for NATO, support for EU? Thanks.
Let me say that disinformation and disinformation campaigns are definitely a very significant part of Russian strategy of military campaigns, of also having other political impact on other countries, where they invest very large amounts of money, and where they have been showing some results. And therefore, this is definitely an area to be very closely watched. This is a topic that we discuss with our Romanian partners here, the issue of presence of Russian narratives, false Russian narratives, and what could be done more in terms of countering the spread of the Russian propaganda narratives in the information space in this country. This is definitely the area where I think we have common interest to join efforts. And on the Ukrainian side, also with our experience and expertise in this area, of course, we are also ready to share it.
Thank you. Please.
I'd like to thank you for the invitation to the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center. Of course, Your Excellency, it's an honor to be here also, a pleasure. We met in Kiev. We worked with, when the ambassador was in charge of, I don't know, 40, 70 countries. I don't recall it this time, but in charge of Latin America. I would like to point out that Argentina has voted in favor of all the resolutions at the General Assembly that we have left our historical neutrality and that we hope that peace will come soon to Ukraine. I see also, you pointed out about the peace formula. You were expecting something from Latin America. I think it's a very important initiative that Ukraine has initiated by approaching to the Latin American countries. I think this will bring some important results. Of course, there is some other issues, and one of the main points, of course, is the long-lasting and just peace. Is Ukraine expecting some warranties at this point? Will there be a group of countries? I don't know exactly what is the perspective now, because a long-lasting peace maybe would need some warranties from other states, from Europe, from other continents. It's just a reflection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and it is a great pleasure for me to see you present at this discussion. Indeed, we have a very strong interest in continuing to foster our relations with countries of Latin America. And we do see that those countries also have a stake in making sure that Ukraine wins and peace, just and lasting peace is reestablished. For us, just peace is peace founded on basic principles of international law enshrined in the UN Charter and the Helsinki Final Act. It's very simple. About the guarantees, as I was saying before, for us, the number one top priority in terms of security of Ukraine is membership in NATO. This is a number one priority because we see that this is the way whereby a country secures its future in safety. But that would take time, and we recognize it, even if it is a shorter time. So until then, yes, we do expect that decisions will be taken on security guarantees for Ukraine. This is something that is intensively discussed now with allies, and Ukraine articulated its proposal on what such guarantees may constitute by producing a document that is called the Kyiv Security Compact. That is a set of recommendations that was developed by a group of international experts headed by the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Mr. Yermak, and former NATO Secretary General, Mr. Rasmussen, and it was a paper that was produced in autumn of last year. And it contains, again, very specific recommendations on what these guarantees may constitute. And because there is a different nature of these guarantees, how they would interlock, in this system, more comprehensive system of security for Ukraine. So this could serve as a basis, and we expect that it will be used as a basis for giving such guarantees to the country.
Thank you. Very short.
Center. What are, in your opinion, the measures to counter the disinformation war, Russia's disinformation war?
I will tell you about the experiences of Ukraine. And I think one of the very important lessons that we have is that we need to cut the channels that are used to spread disinformation. Because these channels have nothing to do with freedom of expression, with freedom of the media, they're used specifically to undermine democracy and to undermine democratic societies and to sow distrust, mistrust, differences. And they're used again as a war instrument, actually. And there is a need to recognize it. This is not about freedom. This is about an aggressive nation which is nearby, using it as an instrument of malicious impact on the society of a given country. And this recognition could serve as a good basis for considering very specific steps that need to be taken to undercut this influence. So, alongside other strategies like debunking the narratives, and it's all very important, of course. But I think that the first, what I mentioned, is something that plays a very significant role.
Thank you. On this note, Your Excellency, thank you for accepting our invitation, taking part in our program. Mr. Raetchi, thank you for helping me moderate today. Thank you to everyone being here physically. Merci le directeur. Merci de nouveau. All of those watching us, thank you. Until next time, have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.